Live from New Delhi, you're watching DD India News Hour, India's voice to the world. I'm Mark Lynn. Namaskar. Coming up in the next hour. Explosions continue to rock Gaza as Israeli forces expand their ground operations. The death toll crosses 8,000 in Gaza bombardment. Thousands take to the streets in Madrid and in London calling for ceasefire in Gaza. Pope Francis calls for ceasefire and immediate release of hostages. UN Secretary General António Guterres lauds Nepal's effort to graduate from the LDC category to developing countries status, discusses issues of climate change and sustainable development with the Nepalese Prime Minister Prachanda. South Africa lift their fourth Rugby World Cup by a whisker, 12-11 margin against New Zealand in Paris. Ecstatic fans call for a celebration holiday. Amid the growing international pressure for a ceasefire in the Gaza Strip, Israel has launched the second phase of its war against the Palestinian group Hamas with a ground operation in Gaza. According to the latest report, the death toll in Gaza has increased to 8,005. Troubled by the deaths and violence, people around the world are taking out rallies in favor of a ceasefire.
Israeli army announced the launch of second phase of the war with Hamas on the 24th day. The Israeli military has said that it had struck at least 320 targets in Gaza, including a tunnel housing Hamas fighters and dozens of command and lookout posts. The IDF has released the footage of various target sites and claimed these sites were liable to endanger the troops who are preparing on the Gaza periphery for a ground maneuver.
The ground fighting in the northern Gaza Strip continues. We are processing through the stages of war according to plan. We gradually expanded the ground operation and scale of forces in the Gaza Strip. The ground operation is complex and involves risk for our forces too.
According to the latest report, the death toll in Gaza rose to 8,000 and 20,242 others injured, including 3,324 children. United Nations warned that civilians were running out of places to seek shelter. International Committee of the Red Cross too called for more sustainable aid support to the Gaza Strip.
I think we need a humanitarian pause. So humanitarian pause is urgently needed in Gaza to save more lives. So we just cannot give up hope. I was reading that somewhere that hope is also a talent. So we need to really nourish and cherish this talent. Ultimately, there will be a solution. We just have to continue doing our effort.
In addition to the humanitarian appeal from top leaders of the world, the rallies are also taking place globally for Gaza, demanding a call for a ceasefire. Thousands of pro-Palestinian marched in London.
I'm expecting my government to listen to the people. And as we're coming out here today, I'm expecting, just some compassion. I think that's the bare minimum.
Protests in solidarity with Palestine were also held in Madrid, Berlin and Beirut, while New Yorkers take to the streets in support of Palestinians, chanting, "Ceasefire now."
As Israel's army moves into the Gaza Strip, Hezbollah have started firing rockets, and they have been firing into Israeli territory, leading to a big threat for Israelis. The clashes at the Israel-Lebanon border have raised the fears of a wider war. DD India correspondent Amritpal Singh now reports from Shlomi, Israel.
As the Israeli army enters the Gaza Strip, Hezbollah has started firing rockets and missiles into the Israeli territory. They have threatened the Israelis that if they do a ground assault inside the Gaza Strip, they will open a full-fledged war front. I'm right now standing at a place called Shalomi. You can see the smoke in the air. Constantly, rockets are being fired by the Hezbollah into Israeli territory, and Israel is responding back by firing back. Those mountains, that wall that you see is actually Lebanon. I'm standing at a place called Shalomi, which is right on the Israel-Lebanon border. It is the last village or kibbutz on the Israeli side, and on the other side, what you see is Shalomi, and you can hear rockets being fired, missiles being fired, and RT guns being fired in response by the Israeli military. This area has been declared a militarized zone. People have been evacuated completely. It has become, cities and villages along the border have become a ghost border. Now the real threat remains that if Hezbollah opens a full front, Israel will have to fight the war on two fronts, one on the south with Hamas in the Gaza Strip, and one here in the north with Hezbollah. So the situation here is deteriorating by the minute as the Israeli army decide. You can hear these rocket fire behind me. That smoke that you see up there is the Hezbollah hitting territories inside Israel, and Israel responding back with its trying to neutralize their rockets and also hitting bases inside Lebanon of Hezbollah. Benjamin Netanyahu, Israeli Prime Minister, had warned Hezbollah that if they jump into this war, he will finish them off as he's vowed to do with the Hamas. But that is easier said than done, because Hezbollah has the backing of Iran. Now, the real threat at this moment is the regional spillover. Will the war escalate? And this is what all countries have the apprehensions, and therefore you see heightened diplomacy happening in New York and elsewhere, Western leaders calling on Benjamin Netanyahu to ask him to take steps which prevents the war from escalating. With cameraman SP Dubey, this is Amritpal Singh at Shalomi on the Israel-Lebanon border for DD India.
Well, Amritpal Singh now joins us from Jerusalem. Amrit, we just listened to your report from Shalomi, but there is increased activity on the Lebanon border between Hezbollah and the Israeli army. In fact, some of the peacekeeping forces also have been hit. But what can you, tell us about Israel's defense?
Well, Israel is, if you talk about the north, Israel is hitting back at Hezbollah at their bases from where the rocket fire and missiles are being fired, because that is what Netanyahu, as I said in my report, also had warned Hezbollah that if you hit us, we'll hit you back. So they are hitting back. They already earlier this week, they bombed the Damascus and Syrian airport and Aleppo airport in Syria, saying that weapons were being supplied to Hezbollah from there. So they are hitting back at them. They have evacuated the villages and towns 5 kilometers from the border, inside 5 kilometers inside the Israeli territory, declared it a military zone so that the civilian casualties are minimized. And many people are voluntarily evacuating the area even beyond 5 kilometers because the RT guns and the tanks, etc., are right up there, and they're firing, and they tell us here they moved to places, bigger cities like Tel Aviv, Jerusalem, Haifa. So they tell us that they can't sleep in the night because of the fear and also because of the guns booming. Their life has come to a standstill, etc. So Israel is keeping up its defense both in the north and especially in the south with the Gaza Strip. They've gone in for a ground assault with limited numbers, but the indications that are emerging out of the IDF and also from the political leadership here, from the war cabinet here, is that they are looking at going in for a full-scale ground invasion or ground assault. Mark.
Indeed, Amrit, but looking at your report, there appears to be a threat of the conflict spilling over into becoming a much bigger one, a regional conflict. How real is that threat, given what's happened over the last 24 hours?
That threat looms large here because if Hezbollah joins in, will the Lebanese army, what will the Lebanese army do? What would both state and non-state actors based out of Syria do? Houthis have already fired 2 missiles towards Israel. One was intercepted by the Saudis. The other hit a target in Egypt. It missed its target. So there are actors, the US, the West and Israel accuses Iran of backing them. Today, just a little while back, the Iranian foreign minister dismissed these reports as baseless, saying that we've got nothing to do with it. But the fact remains that Qatar and Iran do fund organizations like Hamas. Iran funds, Shia-based Shia organizations based out of Syria, and there is a direct link they have with the Houthis. Hezbollah is again a Shia terrorist group, so they do fund them. So even if they don't come in and fight directly, they would use their proxies to fight them. So therefore, the threat of spillover remains. But even as I say that, there is hectic diplomacy going on to see that other countries do not join in. It does not become, the 67 kind of a situation, right, which it doesn't look like, because now relations of Israel with the Arab world have improved, and there are trade ties, etc., which have deepened. So you basically escalated the cost of them joining in. But the threat of proxies and its spreading, having some sort of spillover in the areas around Israel, very much remains, Mark.
Okay, we'll leave it there. Thank you very much, Amritpal Singh, for that update from Jerusalem. Now, the White House National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan has stressed that Israel should take every means possible to distinguish between Palestinian civilians and Hamas militants in its military operation in Gaza. In an interview to a U.S. news channel, the National Security Advisor to the White House also said that if the American troops are attacked by Iran and its proxies, then the U.S. will respond.
Israel was attacked in a brutal, vicious terrorist attack. They are taking steps to go after the terrorists who struck them. They have been doing so from the air. They're now doing so on the ground. And Hamas, this brutal terrorist organization that conducted the attack, is hiding behind the civilian population, which puts an added burden on Israel to differentiate between the terrorists and innocent civilians. But it doesn't lessen their responsibility under international humanitarian law and the laws of war to do all in their power to protect the civilian population. And that's equally true moving in on the ground as it is taking strikes from the air. Well, the president has been very straightforward on this. If American troops are attacked by Iran and its proxies, we will respond. We did respond. If attacks continue, we will respond. And I think the Iranians understand our message. And we, of course, are taking every measure necessary to protect our forces, to increase our vigilance, and to work with other countries in the region to try to keep this conflict that is currently in Israel and Gaza from spinning out into a regional conflict. But the risk is real, and therefore our vigilance is high, and the steps that we are taking to deter that and prevent that are serious, systematic, and ongoing.
Pope Francis, in his weekly blessing at St. Peter's Square, called for a ceasefire in the war between Israel and Hamas and renewed his appeal for the release of hostages held by the Palestinian terrorist group in Gaza, Hamas, that is. And Francis also spoke as the Israeli forces wage ground operations against Hamas in Gaza in what the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu called the second phase of the 3-week-old war aimed at crushing this group.
Let us continue to pray for Ukraine and also for the grave situation in Palestine, Israel, and the other regions of the war. In Gaza in particular, let there be room to guarantee humanitarian aid, and may the hostages be freed immediately. Let no one abandon the possibility of stopping the weapons. Ceasefire Father Ibrahim Fultas. I listened to him recently on the program in his image, and Father Ibrahim said, ceasefire, ceasefire. He is one of the Vatican's representatives in the Holy Land. We too, with Father Ibrahim, say ceasefire. Stop, brothers and sisters. War is always a defeat. Always, always.
Che nessuno abbandoni la possibilità di fermare le armi.
Well, still to come here on DD India News Hour. A blast near the Indian city of Kochi targets the Jehovah Witnesses community, a convention that they were having in Kerala. And Detroit auto workers reach an agreement with automakers. You're watching DD India News Hour. My name is Mark Lin. The UN Secretary General António Guterres is in Nepal. His visit assumes significance as it is his first in the 6 years that he's been Secretary General of the United Nations. He's also a keen climate advocate and will be looking firsthand at the impact of climate change on the world's tallest mountains. Here's Shweta Singh's report from Kathmandu.
UN Secretary-General António Guterres is in Nepal on a 4-day visit. On Sunday, the UN chief met Nepalese Prime Minister Pushpa Kamal Dahal Prachand. The meeting primarily revolved around Nepal's ongoing peace process, Nepal's graduation to a middle-income developing country, and other pressing issues of the hour, such as climate change and sustainable development. Guterres expressed his pleasure at Nepal's efforts to graduate from LDC to developing countries.
On this trip, I will visit the Himalayas to see for myself the terrible impact of the climate crisis on the glaciers. The situation is dire and it is accelerating. Nepal has lost close to a third of its ice in just over 30 years, and glaciers are melting at record rates. The impact on communities is devastating, and I want to explore how the United Nations and Nepal can work together even more to solve problems, boost prospects, and improve international support.
The Prime Minister of Nepal expressed hope that the target of Sustainable Development Goals may be achieved by 2030. He also hailed efforts of the UN Secretary-General for support in wake of adverse effects of climate change in Nepal.
The UN Secretary-General held talks with me and the Foreign Minister and Defense Minister over several national and international issues. Mainly, we discussed climate change and its adverse effects on Nepal. We laud the efforts of the international community, particularly the United Nations Secretary-General, over climate issues.
US Chief António Guterres also called upon Nepali Congress Chairman Sher Bahadur Deoba and CPN Chairman KP Sharma Oli today. He met the President of Nepal Ramachandra Paudel at Sheetal Niwas residence. On Monday, the UN chief is expected to visit Namche and Annapurna Base Camp to observe climate change and will also visit Lumbini.
And our correspondent Shweta Singh is now joining us from Kathmandu with an update on this. Shweta, what is the overall agenda of the UN Secretary General?
Actually, UN Secretary General António Guterres, when he has arrived in Nepal, his major focus is on peace accord that is ongoing in Nepal, because he specified today about the transitional justice to the people of Nepal who fought for the democracy, to have democracy in the nation. So there were several cases as disappearing of the people. So for that record, there was actually commission formed in Nepal, Truth and Reconciliation Commission in 2006. So onwards from that long, you see, recently the bill was tabled in the Parliament of Nepal, yet it has to be act. So he was here to see the peace accord, how Nepal is moving through the transition of getting justice to their people, since they fought against monarchy and Maoist People's War came into ceasefire. So he was to see that, along with sustainable development goal, what Nepal is really working hard to achieve. So how Nepal is progressing in this front for overviewing that effort, and definitely climate change, because he is in Nepal, he'll be visiting Namche village. That is closest to Everest Base Camp. Here he will be observing how climate change have impacted Himalayas and what efforts can be taken to mitigate the climate change. Along with Everest Base Camp Namche village, he will be visiting Pokhara and then Annapurna Base Camp. Similarly here, he will be like he will be observing the Himalayas changes, how climate change have impacted it. And then after this, he will be going to Lumbini, the birthplace of Gautam Buddha.
Right.
So that's
Shweta, also, what are the expectations from the Nepalese government side about this visit?
Actually, you see, this was a very grand moment when Nepal had the world to show its asset, that is tourism. Because UNSG will be here and he will be going to Everest Base Camp, Pokhara, Annapurna Base Camp, and Annapurna is really beautiful. So Nepal has a beautiful chance to globally showcase its beauty here and then attract tourism. Actually, when you see as UNSG is here, what Nepal expects is with arrival of UNSG to get more chance of interacting with international community, get its place, get its name in international community. Because Nepal, as you see, it's a country where the economy is basically run by tourism, followed by remittance by the Nepali people who reside outside in different countries and then send back home money. And internally, tourism is the major earning factor. So here, when he is there, UNSG is here, so Nepal has a very good opportunity to showcase its strength. And you see the effort what Nepal is trying to put, being LDC. Presently, Nepal is in least developed country list. So by putting effort into enhancing its status as a developing country, definitely it expects that international community will be more funding its SDG efforts. So main attraction is that by UNSG visit, Nepal government expects more of, I would say, support from the international community in achieving SDG.
Shweta Singh, thank you very much for that update from Kathmandu. A homemade bomb exploded at a convention center in the southern Indian state of Kerala. It seems to have targeted a convention being held by the Jehovah's Witnesses community there.
The security personnel probing the blast at a convention center in Kochi in the southern Indian state of Kerala got success after a man has surrendered before the Kerala police in connection with the serial blasts. The alleged accused has been identified as Dominic Martin.
One person has surrendered in Kodagara police station in Thrissur rural in the morning, claiming that he has done it. His name is Dominic Martin. And he claims that he belonged to the same group of Sabha. We are verifying it.
The explosions left 2 people dead and while over 45 others got injured.
Today morning at 9:40 a.m. approximately, there was an explosion in Zamra International Convention Center, Kalamasheri. Preliminary investigation shows it is a IED device and we are examining it.
India's Home Minister Amit Shah took stock of the situation in the state during a phone call with Kerala Chief Minister Pinarayi Vijayan. Kerala Governor Arif Muhammad Khan condemned the blast.
This is a horrific tragedy. Crime against law, crime against constitution, crime against humanity. these things are not to be absolutely unacceptable in a rule of law society, in a democracy. My heart goes out to the victims of this tragedy, and I'm sure that the law and order enforcement agencies will act in a manner so that there is no repetition of this kind ever in future.
Indian government minister Rajiv Chandrasekhar also condemned the blast and termed it as depressing. The blast in Kerala had occurred at a convention centre where a prayer meeting of Jehovah's Witnesses was underway in Kochi on Sunday.
The automotive giant Stellantis has reached a new tentative labor agreement with the striking auto workers of the United Auto Workers Union in the United States. Nearly 14,000 UAW workers who were on strike at two Stellantis assembly plants and several parts distribution centers in Michigan and Ohio, they have been told to end their strike and to return to work. The U.S. President Joe Biden had appointed Stellantis and UAW. He had applauded them, in fact, for reaching this agreement. The deal comes after the union and Ford Motor Company. They had announced a tentative agreement on a new contract. The deals include many of the similar terms, including a 25% general wage increase. Meanwhile, UAW they have expanded their strike at the General Motors plant in Spring Hill, which is in Tennessee. The Indian Commerce Minister, Piyush Goyal, who is visiting Japan, attending the G7 trade ministers meeting there in Osaka. He interacted with the members of the Indian community in Japan, and he said on the social media platform X that thriving Indian diaspora in Japan acts as a bridge to further foster collaboration for the growth of the two countries. Now some good news from the Indian state of Gujarat in Ahmedabad. There, a student of the 8th standard has developed GPS technology-based safety shoes. He hopes that it's for the Indian Army personnel. With these shoes on, if they get into any trouble, their location can easily be traced. The shoes will serve to ensure the safety of women, children, and elderly in addition to the Army soldiers.
Atman Acrobatic Shoe is a wearable safety device which is compact, concealed and a customizable device. This assures the safety of each and every people who wears. This can be fitted in any shoe you give. And another thing is that this helps you in SOS situations. For example, women safety, child safety, kids kidnapping safety, blind safety, old home people safety, armed forces. Whenever you are in a SOS situation, you just need to press the button, SOS button. That will trigger GSM and GPS and send the latitude and longitude to the registered number devices, which will help them to find them where are they. This is a two-way communication. If they also need, the relative also need to see their location, they will be provided with a code and a password. Just they need to enter in the SMS and they will get their live location. And it updates automatically every 5 minutes, 10 minutes. Whole thing is customizable.
Well, the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi will visit the western state of Gujarat on Monday. Prime Minister will inaugurate and lay the foundation stone of various development projects worth around 5,800 crore rupees. 1 crore is equal to 10 million. This is in multiple sectors in Mehsana. The Prime Minister will also participate in the Rashtriya Ekta Divas program, or the Unity Day program. On the 31st of October, he'll pay tribute to the Iron Man of India, who is the first Home Minister of India, Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel, on his birth anniversary. The Prime Minister will address the officer trainees of the 98th Common Foundation course at the culmination of the 5th edition of a program called Arambh. Still to come here on DD India News Hour. Street protests turn violent in Dhaka. The opposition demands an interim government to conduct the polls. Death toll in the Kazakhstan mine fire has risen to 42.
India that invents. India that innovates. India that excites. India that invites. Land of possibility. Teeming with opportunities. Watch India Ideas each Thursday, 8 p.m. only on DD India.
You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Mark Lynn. Here's a recap of our main stories. India keeps up its winning ways in the Cricket World Cup, thrashing England by 100 runs, defending a low score. UN Secretary-General António Guterres lauds Nepal's efforts to graduate from LDC to developing country status and discusses issues of climate change and sustainable development with the Nepalese Prime Minister Prachanda. Explosions continue to rock Gaza as Israeli forces expand ground operations. The death toll crosses 8,000 in Gaza bombardment. Thousands take to the streets in Madrid and London calling for a ceasefire in Gaza, and Pope Francis has called for a ceasefire and immediate release of hostages. Amid the Israel-Palestine conflict, concerns are rising over the safety of thousands of Palestinians inside Gaza's Al-Quds hospital, which has received a warning from the Israeli army to evacuate. Around 14,000 people have been displaced and are currently residing in the hospital, in addition to its intensive care unit patients and 800 injured patients who are receiving treatment in the emergency department. According to reports, raids conducted on Sunday took place just 50 meters from the facility. A number of protesters, including families of the October 7 attacks in southern Israel, have once again raised their voice against the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, holding pictures of victims and hostages of the Hamas incursion into their country. The protesters questioned how long this violence would continue. Netanyahu met with some families of the Israelis who are still being held hostage in Gaza on Saturday and assured them that their release is part of the country's military goals. And we are joined by Mr. Yossi Zilberman, who's the deputy spokesperson of the Israeli Ministry of Foreign Affairs, joining us from Tel Aviv. Thanks very much. You know, the impression that many analysts have is that Israel seems to be crossing the limits of legitimacy in this response to the terror attacks. What are your views?
Well, let me correct you. First of all, good evening. Let me just correct you a little bit. You've mentioned some protests. You've mentioned the numbers that are coming out of Gaza. And I would like, first of all, to clarify. The numbers that are coming from Gaza are based on the health ministry in Gaza that is controlled by the terror organization, which is Hamas. The same terror organization that hurt our civilians 3 weeks ago while crossing the border in an unprovoked attack against civilians and killing more than 1,400 people, massacring them. These are not the 7th of October event or incidents, or I saw the headlines that you wrote. Those are a butchering and slaughtering of people that happened 3 weeks ago in Israel. So let's clarify the numbers a little bit before we start our very nice conversation. and our numbers are very well based, while the numbers that, if I can remind the viewers as well, while we were accused 2 weeks ago for bombing a hospital inside the Gaza Strip, and eventually it was revealed that it was a failed launch by the Islamic Jihad that hurt dozens of people, and not 500 people as Israel was accused of. So let's again remember that the numbers that perhaps we hear from the other side are not that accurate.
Fair enough. But I mean, I wouldn't ask you to give me the estimates that you have in mind, but you know, what precautions are you taking to differentiate civilian and Hamas targets?
This is exactly the difference between Israel and the Hamas. We, as country that is part of the international community, we are obliged as well to be to manage our war against Hamas in certain rules. We abide international law, and we actually abide and we continue our fight against Hamas using these terms and these lines. To remind the viewers, before hitting the northern part of Gaza, we issued pamphlets to the citizens and civilians to move from the northern part of the Gaza Strip, because it became a land of terror, a land where terror acts came out of, and terror infrastructure was built on. And we, as a country that is abiding the international law, we actually called to civilians, to people that are uninvolved, to move to the southern part of Gaza. And this is something that we are doing, while comparing to the terror organization Hamas that attacked civilians in order to cause mayhem and destruction. So again, this is the difference. We, as a country, are allowing actually the entrance of humanitarian aid. We have dealt with this situation with the US and Egypt as mediators in this event, but we will not allow to Hamas to raise its head once again.
But Mr. Zilberman, even in your country, there are protests now coming. People are losing their patience. They want to know what's being done about the hostages. How quickly can they be released? What's the update you can give us?
This is indeed a very touchy subject, a very sensitive subject in the Israeli society. We are talking about 230 people that are being held hostage inside Gaza, and we are not talking about soldiers only. Most of them actually are civilians. Many of them, about 30 of them, are children. Some of them are elderly on wheelchairs. Many of them women. Some of them have healthy issues. Till now, and we are talking about 3 weeks after the massacre and after they have been kidnapped to Gaza, no Red Cross crew visited them, no international law or anything was granted in order to see their situation. And we are very worried about their situation. And of course, there is a lot of tension in the Israeli society, because what is going on is incomprehensible for us as a society. And you know, every time that I'm speaking, and I'm always glad to speak with our friends in India, I'm comparing a little bit the size of Israel and India.
Sure.
Is India as the most populated country in the world, and one of the biggest, and of course one of our best allies in the world, while Israel is only a little bit less than 10 million. So you can imagine that when we are talking about 1,400 people that have murdered in this massacre, and about 230 people that were being kidnapped, just the ratio of the numbers to our society is incomprehensible.
Sure. I'm sure that that mathematical comparison is something that people have in mind and has been mentioned quite a few times. But you know, people are concerned. Why is this going to be a long, drawn-out war? The earlier wars that Israel fought seem to have been swift. Why is the military strategy different this time round?
I'll bring you back once again to my prior point. We're talking about an event that shook the Israeli society in a way that it was not shook in the last 80 years. This Saturday, 3 weeks ago, was the day where the number of Jews that were being slaughtered was the highest number in one day since the Holocaust. So for us, this number and this event is something that is a landmark in our history. We still, as I said, are struggling to comprehend it. But if there is, in a way, a status quo in the Israeli society is that we need to crush and to eliminate the threat of Hamas, that it won't hurt the Israeli civilians once again. This is why this is not an operation. This is a war. This is a war against Hamas, and we're going to win it, and we're going to eliminate and crush the threat that Hamas is posing on the civilians of Israel in order for events like that never to come back once again.
But Mr. Zilberman, Hamas is inside the tunnels, as you all have said. So how are you going to get them out? How are you going to smoke them out, or are you going to crush them, as you say?
I'm not a military person. I am a humble diplomat, and my role is to push forward our legitimacy in the world. We have our own ways. Our army is already in Gaza, and it has its own paths and maneuvers in order to bring out, first of all, the cowards that are hiding behind civilians, the cowards that are hiding under hospitals in the Gaza Strip, which is a war crime, to remind the viewers. And we will bring those rats out, and we will eliminate Hamas. I know that it sounds very hard, the words that I'm saying, but the feelings and the atmosphere these days in Israel is an atmosphere that we need to eliminate this threat once and for all.
But a final question. I mean, you know, even the UN chief has called for you to relax some of the monitoring at the Rafah crossing. The aid seems to be coming in a trickle, even though you've said that you're allowing things to come in. But, you know, why can't it increase? Then at least the world will begin to see what you're saying. It may be true.
I think that there are some negotiation, there are some mediators that are trying to find the better way in order to bring more humanitarian aid to Gaza. We are not against that, but we are against bringing more humanitarian aid before we see some kind of a sign of good faith, and we need to see that our hostages are in good situation. It is, again, we cannot stand the thought that there are children, 3-year-old children, that are being held hostage right now in Gaza inside the tunnel. I mean, can you imagine this? In order to us to bring aid to the people of Gaza, they need to release our hostages right now, and then we can continue from that.
We leave it there. Thank you very much, Mr. Yossi Zilberman, the Deputy Spokesperson of Israel's Foreign Ministry. Thank you for speaking to us here on DD India. The security has been tightened in Bangladesh following clashes that broke out on Sunday in the capital Dhaka. On Sunday, a nationwide strike called by the Bangladesh Nationalist Party came to an end as the miscreants torched several public transportation systems. A bus assistant burned to death after a bus was set on fire by miscreants in Dhaka's Demra area. This happened early Sunday. Meanwhile, the detective branch of the police detained the BNP Secretary General Mirza Fakhrul Islam Alamgir, and they did so from his residence, which was in Gulshan. That happened on Sunday morning. The death toll in the Kazakhstan mine fire has risen to 42 on Sunday. The tragic incident had taken place on Saturday when the fire broke out in the mine, which was operated by ArcelorMittal Temirtau. The search continues now for 4 miners who are still unaccounted for. The operator ArcelorMittal Temirtau is the local unit of the Luxembourg-based steelmaker. It claimed 206 of the 252 people who were at the Kostenko mine had been evacuated, and 18 people had needed medical attention. Still to come here on DD India News Hour. Matthew Perry, who played the affable Chandler in the hit series Friends, dies aged 54. And India thrash England in the ICC World Cup.
India that invents. India that innovates. India that excites. India that invites. Land of possibility. Teeming with opportunities. Watch India Ideas each Thursday, 8 p.m. only on DD India.
You're watching DD India News Hour. My name is Mark Lynn. In a tragic incident, at least 32 people have been killed and more than 60 injured in a crash involving multiple vehicles in Egypt. This incident occurred in the morning and involved a bus and then several cars bound for Cairo on the main desert road in the Bahira Governorate. The crash involved a passenger bus and several cars, some of which caught fire. An oil leak from one of the vehicles caused the collision, which then spread to other cars nearby. Ambulance rushed to the site to transfer the injured to hospital. The Mexican National Guard troops, they began clearing debris from the streets of Acapulco Midtown after the Hurricane Otis had battered the Mexican city, the coastal city, and flattened homes. The death toll from the Hurricane Otis has risen to 39, and at least 10 people are reportedly missing. Officials fear the toll may rise even further, adding that the storm caused devastation worth billions of dollars, while more than 8,000 armed forces staff have been deployed to clear the debris left behind. Authorities claim that Otis has been the most powerful storm ever to strike Mexico. It even caught forecasters by surprise, gathering strength with unexpected speed before it came ashore, surpassing initial predictions. Two trains collided in the Indian southern state of Andhra Pradesh in Vizianagaram district, in which at least 10 people are feared killed and about 25 injured. According to officials, this was a rear collision between the Visakhapatnam Palasa passenger train and the Visakhapatnam Ragada passenger train. The State Chief Minister, Jagan Mohan Reddy, has expressed shock over the train mishap and instructed the officials to carry out relief operations. One of the stars of the smash hit TV sitcom Friends, Matthew Perry, passed away at the age of 54. The actor was found dead in a hot tub on Saturday in his Los Angeles home. The actor has been widely known as Chandler Bing for his famous character in the sitcom Friends. The police cordoned off the street where Matthew Perry was found dead. The Los Angeles Police Department's robbery homicide detectives were investigating the incident, and many Hollywood stars took to X to react to the death of Perry. In a monumental turn of events, the Writers Guild of America made significant strides towards resolving their 148-day strike, one of the longest standoffs in Hollywood's history. After weeks of intense negotiations, the WGA reached an agreement, it's tentative, on a new contract with the entertainment companies. The tentative deal, a result of extensive discussions between the WGA and the Alliance of Motion Pictures and Television Producers, addresses several crucial issues raised by the writers. The exact language of the contract is yet to be released. You're watching DD India News Hour. Time now for the sports news. And South Africa became the first team to win the Rugby World Cup 4 times when they beat New Zealand 12-11 on Saturday. South Africa's latest victory means that the Springboks have won half of the 8 tournaments that they have taken part in. South Africa were absent from the first 2 editions.
We knew it wasn't going to be easy. We had to put out a massive performance, you know, given how the All Blacks have performed in the playoffs this far. We knew it was going to take a massive effort. Obviously, the red card to Sam Cane did change the dynamics of the game a bit, but we knew, or we said at halftime, that the momentum was going to swing their way, and we had to find a way to absorb that pressure. And, you know, credit to the All Blacks, they put us under massive pressure, and, you know, our boys absorbed it.
The Premier League have another high-profile match between 2 of its biggest teams. Manchester United take on Manchester City in an important clash at Old Trafford. This is happening Sunday. Now, Manchester City are at the 2nd place and have been impressive so far this season. They eased past Young Boys by a comfortable 3-1 scoreline in the UEFA Champions League this week. After the win, they will be confident ahead of this fixture. And on the other hand, Manchester United are in the 8th position in the league table, and they have been inconsistent this season. The Red Devils defeated FC Copenhagen by a narrow margin, 1-0, in the previous game. They will be looking to achieve a similar result this weekend. So the outcome of this latest encounter at Old Trafford is not a foregone conclusion, even without the air of uncertainty that hangs over both sides going into Sunday's game. Well, India trounced England by 100 runs in the ICC Cricket World Cup in Lucknow, registering the 6th consecutive win for the team. The Indian pacers, Jasprit Bumrah and Mohammad Shami, wreaked havoc. They dismissed England for 129 runs. Earlier, England had restricted India to 229 runs for 9 in 50 overs after electing to field first. Rohit Sharma led the charge with 87 runs. Surya Kumar Yadav made 49, while KL Rahul made 39. And with this win, now India moved to the top of the league table, undefeated. They were already on the top of the league table in the tournament so far. And for England, this is their 4th consecutive loss, 5th overall, and it seems that the defending champions are out of the competition. And that's a great win for India, keeping up the wins and the hopes for a billion people. That's all we have in this edition of News Hour. You can connect with us on Facebook, X, formerly known as Twitter, and then also on Instagram. We'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Mark Lynn from all of us here in Delhi. Thanks very much for watching DD India News Hour. Namaskar.